Hello, everyone. I think people are joining us now. And my name is Cary Broussard. I'm your host of Cinderella CEO On-Air, which I shortened to C2CEO On-Air. And I'm also the Chief Transformation Officer of Cinderella to CEO and author of the book From Cinderella to CEO. And our Learning Lab series podcast is so helpful to me. So I hope it's helpful to you. If you're here listening to this podcast or if you're listening to a recording, the leaders and subject matter experts that we bring on have the most amazing stories and they give us hands-on advice to ensure that we all flourish going forward in the new normal. And who knows what's going to happen in 2021, but we're all hopefully, I think, have an opportunity to stick together, network, be supportive of each other, and listen to people who have been through tough times before. And we like to call C to CEO the champion of the Cinderella comeback plan. We bring you the stories of women and men who have worked their way up, overcome hurdles, and come from a place where they make dreams come true for themselves and others. So our goal at C2CEO is to empower you to be the best person you can be in every dimension of your being, especially when you have the desire to lead and bring others along with you. And that's who we have today. Her name, if I haven't already talked to you, is Maria Bartolome Winans, coming to us from North Carolina. And hello, Maria.
Hello, Cary. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. And as this is my first day in the office, I was tested
Yeah.
to make sure I didn't have COVID and I'm able to come into our office building, which is great. I know I really like working from home. It looks like you're in your home office.
Yeah, I'm usually in the RT. Well, I'm in Cary, North Carolina, and I'm usually in our great marketing center here in RTP, which is our Research Triangle Park. But since last year, we've been all at home, working from home in our home office.
I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. So I'm going to give a little background for those of on the call on the pod listening to the podcast who may not know a lot about you, but you are Chief Marketing Officer of IBM America's Marketing, and you lead all the aspects of marketing for IBM, which includes client experience, engagement, and IBM brand health. You've been there 25 plus years, which is amazing. That I want to hear about all the different roles that you've held because you've worked with the Watson customer engagement team, Smarter Cities, Mobile, IBM Latin America, all of this. And you were born in Santiago, Chile, and you came to the United States when you were 10. We're going to hear your story and how you have moved up into the one of the top corporations in the world, and you also co-chair IBM's Hispanic Executive Council. You've authored a groundbreaking study, which I posted to LinkedIn today. That was the IBM Institute, part of the IBM Institute for Business Value, about the vastly untapped potential within the Hispanic community in the United States. So not only are you a top level executive with IBM, we're going to talk about work-life integration, and we're also going to talk about what a great athlete you are. You enjoy kickboxing, you teach kickboxing, and Russian kettlebells. So I want to know all about this. So please, Maria, would you get started by just sharing a little bit about or a lot about your story? Where can we start? You have so many places we could
Yeah,
start.
yeah. Well, what a great introduction. What a great introduction. You've given me a lot to talk about, but let me give you a little bit about my background first, and within that, some of the things that kind of guided me over kind of my trajectory, whether career, the last 25 plus years at IBM, but more importantly, also through life. As Cary said, I was born in Santiago, Chile, and I had a tremendous opportunity. I have parents that, were such role models for me throughout my life and still are, because both of them are very active, in North Carolina. But my dad had an opportunity to come to the US to do his thesis at Duke University. And so he uprooted his family from Santiago, Chile, the capital, and we came to North Carolina at that time. Think about it, many years ago, when North Carolina is not what it is today, especially the Research Triangle part. So here we are as a young family, didn't speak a word of English, come to the South of the US in North Carolina, as you can imagine, looked very different. I look Latina. There was nobody that looked like me in North Carolina. Didn't speak the language. And I always say I learned how to speak English watching Sesame Street. I would sit in front of the television and learn and count. And that's how I taught myself. But what was my backdrop of why I share that is because it was very tough growing up when you are so different. You don't speak the language, you look different, you're always called out. At school, everybody would say, hey, we're going to recess. No, Maria, you've got to go here because we've got to do more work with you to really get you into the curriculum. So you were always looked at as different. And my parents were very adamant that at home, we spoke Spanish. And, when you're a kid, you come to everything you want to do is you want to fit in. You don't want to be different. And I always said to my parents, I want to speak English. Do not talk to me in Spanish in public. I want to be just like everybody else. But my mother always said, Maria, you may not appreciate it now, but language and culture are a gift, and being unique is going to help you in the life. You may not realize it now, but embellish that, really admire the fact that you are unique, that you're different. You will be memorable, and you will use it as an opportunity to really bring a different voice. I didn't realize that as a kid. And I didn't realize that how important it was going to be throughout my career. And coming into IBM, when I had a great opportunity after finishing my school at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill,
Go Tar Heels.
Yeah, go Tar Heels. I had a great opportunity to come into IBM. And what I noticed at IBM was the people, smart people, the opportunity to really come and do whatever. I felt like I had an open canvas in front of me. But more importantly, IBM was a company that really hired me for me, who I was, my background. And that became even more true just a few years into IBM when I was given opportunities to really travel the world and go do amazing things, whether it was in Latin America, whether it was in Europe. And as a young professional, I realized, wow, this is a company that I could really build a career. And it was up to me what I wanted to do. But, and that's really the 25 years. In those 25 years, I've done all kinds of roles because I am curious, because I also feel and always felt that my parents did such an amazing and took an amazing risk to really uproot us and give us an opportunity to do something very, once in a lifetime coming to the US. And I had to prove that out. So for me, my driver has been, my family. Behind every Latina or Latino, there is the family. But more important, the role model that both my parents and the opportunity that they gave me. And that's really what drives me every day, is being better to really make them proud that all that risk they took was right.
Yes.
Was right for their family.
And do you think that kids today feel that same way about their parents in the Hispanic community?
Always. I think at the heart of a Hispanic family is the parenting, parents at the core, the respect, the way that you talk to your parents. I mean, even in the Spanish language, those of you that may know some Spanish, when you refer to somebody that's elder, it's tú, if I'm talking to a peer, is usted, if you're talking out of respect to whether an elder or your family. For me, my parents have always been role models that I respect and admired, and have always been the fuel behind the air behind my wings.
Yes.
And I think at the heart of any Latina family or Latino family, you still have that. It is strong in our culture.
I love that. And I think I was just, again, reading the study, and a couple of things that I read were that Hispanics represent 1 out of every 5 people in the US, and they are estimated to drive nearly 25% of the country's GDP growth. I mean, that is huge.
That is huge. It's a huge opportunity, but it's an untapped potential, because when you really look at corporations, 4% of IBM executives are Hispanic. So it
Is
is
that typical? Is that typical
yeah,
across corporate America?
it
Mhm.
is typical. It's unfortunate, but to me, it's a tremendous opportunity, and this is why part of my role in IBM, not only as CMO of Americas and leading marketing for the US, for Canada, for Latin America, but I'm also co-chairing our Hispanic Council, which is all about how do we recruit more Hispanic talent at IBM? How do we help them progress in their career? How do we ensure that we connect them as a community within IBM? And how do we show up in the marketplace as a company that hires and that has underrepresented minorities in key positions? And that is now one of my primary priorities as an executive in IBM. It's a huge opportunity. Diversity, we know, drives innovation. It's been at the heart of what IBM stands for. And this is this is minorities at all level. For me, because I'm Hispanic, I've dedicated a lot of what I do to the Hispanic community, but I'm also an ally to the African American community, to the
Mm.
Indian community. So it is super important. And, and I'll say, I often get asked, how can you be with the company for 25 years? Especially in the world today. And I think one of the things that's at the heart of why I've stayed with IBM has been, the diversity of talent, the smart people, but really the opportunity to do amazing things, within IBM, like leading such an important initiative like the Hispanic, work that we do on behalf of the company. So
Absolutely. And
it's it
that helps with recruitment and retention. And I think I asked you this question yesterday when we were prepping the and I guess it'll be a two-part question. If I did take 4 years of Spanish, but you would never really know it because I don't practice it all the time. But if somebody is non-Spanish speaking, one, is it a good, do you recommend that people learn Spanish enough to just understand it, make sense of the language. And then two, if somebody has a daughter or a son, or there's somebody listening to this call and they want to interview for the at IBM, for instance, what do you recommend? I know that's a two-part question, so
Yeah, so
somewhat
first
unrelated.
on the ability, I think a lot of our kids today, the curriculum is such rooted on a language course. And, I see it in my kids. Now, my kids, I made it just like my parents at home. We speak Spanish, even though their dad's American. We spoke Spanish, and they were born here in the US, they're American, but I reinforce the ability, even if they don't speak it
Right.
or they have a little bit of an accent, they understand it, they know it. I think it's such an advantage. And if there's an opportunity for our children to really start with the language, great.
Mhm.
Um, as you get older, it's a little harder to learn a language, but,
Yeah.
immersing yourself in the culture of other people's where they come from, I think is even more important. Understanding that we're all different, that we bring different things to the table, and being more aware of that than just saying you need to speak Spanish. We do a lot of international. We've done in the past many international assignments of some of our top executives in different countries, and it's not necessarily that they have to speak the language. Is how do you really connect with the people? You understand the culture, and you can understand the differences, more important than just saying, hey, you have to know the language. So for me, it really is how do you show up? How do you embrace diversity? And how do you really bring the inclusivity of groups coming together more important than saying you've got to go learn a language? It's really how do you show up
Yeah.
and really bringing those connections together. I think is super important, and what I would suggest.
That's great advice. And there was a comment in the chat room from Tammy Blanco. I don't know if
Yeah.
you read this. I'll read it out loud. She said, I have no Spanish heritage, learned Spanish in school and married a Cuban, raised my kids with Spanish as their first language. So good for Tammy and lucky for her children, because it's such a great culture. Who wouldn't want to immerse ourselves in the Spanish culture?
Or
Wonderful,
in
Tammy.
or any culture, or any
Or
culture,
any culture,
or
yes.
any culture for sure.
You said that. I think just the interest and the curiosity, perhaps when people do interview for companies like IBM that are global companies, and or just if you're starting your own company as an entrepreneur, just being curious about other cultures and languages in particular would come along with that. What's the benefit, you think, just that curiosity?
Oh, curiosity for me. I think that, if people often ask me, what are the things that you look for when you hire?
Yeah.
What are the things that made you stand out as you moved in your career? And I think number one was, is curiosity. I think the best of people are always curiosity and active learning. And
Right.
for me, those are kind of the attributes, the characteristics I look in when I go hire. I look at attitude, energy level, curiosity, willingness to learn, being agile, resilient. Those are the skills that, when as I think about building teams, building organizations, being able to really kind of bring that to the table. And I think more than ever, especially in the marketing profession that has been kind of at my root, I've had to be an active learner. I mean,
Yeah.
our profession has changed dramatically from when I started in marketing to marketing today. We are now there's the right brain of creativity and there's the business data driven analytics, and bringing those two together and really understanding the world of digital. It's all been a
Yes.
learning. It's been a learning
Yes.
and asking questions, going deeper, hands on, and always active learning. And the best of leaders are active learners. And so curiosity, agility, resiliency, high energy, every challenge, there's an opportunity. So a resume is super important. It tells me, hey, you've gotten some schooling, you've got background, you've got some experience. But I judge a lot by character when I do interviews. And I
Interesting.
get that sense, from individuals during, those moments. And that to me is more important than any tremendous experience or resume, honestly.
In that experience of talking with people and just getting the interview is such a great opportunity to learn. And
Absolutely.
the failure. I mean, what do you think about if somebody? What do you think about just the concept of failure?
Oh,
Fail
I
fast.
think at the core of how we work today is being agile. And agile leadership is all about working in teams, small teams, empowering them to make decisions, empowering them to try new things, test, iterate, learn, fail fast. That is really, as I look at kind of in my role today versus what I did years ago. Years ago, it was you would plan out a year, you would plan
Yes.
out, it was so calculated. There was this fear of taking risk and what if I make the wrong decision. And I think one of the things that when I look back at my career, I was always one of those that I loved risks. I took chances on my career. I took jobs that weren't fully formed. It was, we think this is going to work. We think we're going to go do this, go figure it out. And then you would. But you would
Yes.
always go with, hey, listen, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to learn. If it works, we scale. If it doesn't, we learn, we fail fast, and we move forward. So to me, that is at the heart of how we work, or is being agile. We teach agile, across our marketing teams. And at the heart of that is failing fast, learning and failing, learning and celebrating the failures and sharing them.
Oh, I love it. I mean, that's such a mind shift from probably the way I started in the corporate world. I was so afraid to
Oh, me
fail,
too. Me too.
and
But I
it's
always
just,
said, but I always said, so what I always said is that this is something that I always tell the team. I said, I would rather take a risk. I don't fear risk. What I do fear, if there's one thing that I fear, is regret.
oh,
I never
interesting.
want to look back and say, gosh, if I had only taken that job, if I had only leaned in, if I had only spoken up. To me, that is the biggest fear that I've always had in kind of my journey in life. It was never taking risk. It was really being able to say, God, I regret not
Because
being
you
there.
can't get that time back,
You can't.
that
You
time's
can't.
gone. And I'll just make a point. If anybody wants to put a question in the chat room, please do. I'm going to ask Maria a couple of other questions. We will probably, end soon after, right at the half hour. So want to make sure I get in a couple more questions. And if anybody has anything that they want to ask Maria, and a reminder, I don't know if I said this earlier, Cinderella CEO .com/discovery / if you want to go there and make an appointment with me at any time, if you want to be someone who suggests others for the podcast or be on the podcast, please email me there. I'd love to talk to you. So one of the things that we gleaned yesterday from the conversation, Maria, is when you were in college, you wanted to be a double major at
Oh yeah.
Chapel Hill. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then the power of and?
Yeah. So let me talk, which I think is back then when I was in college, I had no idea I was going to work for IBM or I was going to go into marketing. And I was at the university, and I was a very creative person always. But I also had a very strong kind of lean into the maths. So I had both of these sides of kind of the right left brain. And I'll never forget when I was at Carolina, and once I decided what I was going to do, I went into the art. And I was going into the studio art, not just the art history, studio art. That's hands-on, that's creative, that's sculpting, that's painting. So I was very much in the creative side, but I also knew that mixing the creative with the business, there was something there around the entrepreneurial and, kind of thinking outside the box. So I said to my advisor, I also want to do a double major and do business. And the advice that was given to me was, you're either good at one or the other. If you're really on that creative side, it's really hard to excel in business. If you're really good in business and in the numbers and in the math and the finance, you kind of lack on the creative a little bit. Are you sure? And I said, absolutely. I want to do both. And what was interesting is I stood out in the art school as somebody that really thought outside the box creatively, but I stood out in the business school because I always was looking at new ways to do things. And when you really think about those coming together in the world of today, that's the unicorn marketer. You've got to be really good at the numbers, at the analytics. We are data-led analytics. They tell us, in those moments of truth, about our customers, but you can't lose the creativity of really thinking outside the box. So it's interesting that in my journey, I found my path to marketing because the unicorn of a marketer, the unicorn, as I say, of a CMO, is grounded in analytics, but creative in thought. And
I love that. I love that because there's so many, I see so many children really, their parents letting them paint, and especially when we've been at home for the last, whatever, 9 months it's been. Speaking of home, I want to talk about work-life integration. And that may go to the power of and
Yeah, I
the
want to talk
power
about
of
that.
choice.
Yes.
And I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
No, it's
But
great.
the work-life integration piece, because you're with IBM and have been there for, sort of in the, I don't know, I've always thought IBM being very rigid kind of, and you're explaining to me that it's not so rigid. But what about work-life integration?
Yeah, work-life integration has always been at the heart. And I always say when people ask me, how do you do it, right? How do you do it? It's work-life balancing, and it's ing. It's a verb. I'm always balancing.
Balancing,
It's a
juggling.
verb. It's not, hey, I'm work-life balance today. No, it's work-life balancing. And in that, especially in the world that we're today, this past year, it's been an integration because your personal and your professional have been completely integrated. But when I step back and I look at my life and I think about the work, I think about life, I think about balancing, at the heart of what's guided me has always been the power of choice and the power of the word and because
A
when
and
I
D.
look at my and because what I've always said to myself is, how do you want your life to be? What is the shape of your life? What decisions and choices are you going to make that are going to be at the heart of who you are and what you want to balance? Because I think many of us sometimes find ourselves balancing things on choices that we haven't really made or things that have defaulted to us. So I always said to myself, I want to be all those ands that I choose to be. So as an example, I'm a Chilena at heart. I was born in Chile. I am super proud of who I am, Latina, but I'm also a proud American. I know what America stands for. I am proud to have had an incredible life in the US, but at the heart, I'm Latina. I don't have to make a choice of one or the other. I can be both.
Mm.
And I am both. Next, I chose a career at IBM. I knew when I came into IBM, I wanted to be an executive and I was going to work hard. I was going to lean in and I knew that I had made some big fat goals that I was going to be an executive in this company because I believed in the company. But I also said, I want to be a mother. I want to get married. I want to have children. I chose both. Balancing both of those are choices that I made, being an executive and being a mother. I'm also, as you learned, I'm an artist. I loved art. It is an outlet of creativity for me. I still continue to paint. It is an outlet. I'm also a fitness instructor. I have been super active all my life in fitness. At one point I thought I was going to go into a career of fitness. My father always said to us when we were young, there's two things in life that money can't buy. Two things in life that money can't buy: your reputation and your health. Once you lose both, it doesn't matter how much money you have. So for me, it's always been super important to lead in anything I do with the people. That's reputation and doing good and making decisions that are the right choices, and then fitness. And so I'm a certified instructor. I've been teaching for about 30 years. I teach every day. Right after this podcast today, I'm going to go teach a class in my garage because that's where I'm teaching today. I have a small group that we get together, but fitness has always been at the heart. But I made those choices and I made those ands for myself. So that's when I say the power of and. My life is the choices that I've made. And sometimes there are ors where you have to choose one or the others, but I think it's really powerful when you prioritize those ands and then you do that, the work-life balancing. And I tell you, some weeks are great and some weeks some things fall off, but it's always a balancing for me of the choices that I've made.
Has it been easier or harder with the pandemic, with people working from home and you're working, I'm assuming, at least part-time at home,
Yeah.
if not full-time? Has that been harder to prioritize things or easier? And we talked about empathy. Is that
Yeah,
part
I
of
think
it?
it's there's a lot of things we've learned over this last year. And I think that it's for me, I would say my answer is it's been disruptive, it's been harder, but it's also taught us a lot about life and things we valued and things we don't. As I reflect back on, the purpose of things that we do, as we think about kind of being agile, and kind of my leadership, how do I'm more of an agile leader, even more than I thought that I was. And then being empathetic. Everybody this past year has been in different situations, and being able to be empathetic of what does people, everybody's environment is very different,
Yeah.
and the personal and the professional have collided. And so the hard part that I've seen has been on the being able to really create that wall of, yes, I'm at home. Yes, I'm not traveling. Yes, I'm always here. Doesn't mean that I've got to be working all the time. And what we
Mhm.
saw a lot in the first of was 7 a.m. calls, 6 o'clock calls, late evening, weekends, because people were, well, you're at home. What else are you going to do? No, you've had to, we had to create those boundaries. And when we started to do some efforts that really focus on how are we more productive in this new way of working and create those boundaries for ourselves, how do we focus on the health and the mental, health and the wellness of our, IBMers? And then how do we stay engaged in a way that is not overbearing, that allows for people to disconnect, but it keeps us all connected? And so we really focus on that, and we learned a lot along the way. And I think more than anything, what I learned about is, as leaders, the whole more empathetic side of really understanding. And honestly, I got to know a lot of my team who I thought I knew very well, even more because you're walking into their homes
Yeah.
every day, and how we're working. So it's been a learning
I think
for
that's a
all.
really interesting perspective that we've become, hopefully, potentially more empathetic by being able to see how others are living in their own home environment, and juggling things. Do you feel like when you're balancing, that you're able to be empathetic with yourself? It sounds like you are. You can't be empathetic to others unless you're empathetic with
Well,
yourself,
you've got
perhaps.
to you've got to be empathetic to yourself. I mean, there's certain weeks that I have great plans, great ideas, great things that I want to do, and sometimes it doesn't play out that way.
Mhm.
I had intentions, I thought, I prioritized, but it didn't. And how do I motivate myself to say, you know what, it's okay. Don't be
Yeah.
so hard on yourself. Next week is a new week.
Yeah.
And get back on the bus, as I say. And that happens a lot. I see it a lot in fitness, just being an instructor. If people can't make that work for them, they're like, oh, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. It doesn't necessarily, your routine has to be the same as mine. I like to work out 60 minutes, 45 minutes. If you only have 10, good enough. If you're a morning person, I'm an evening person. Find what works for you and
Mhm.
know that some days you're going to have curveballs and you're going to have things that don't go. But how do you get yourself back on the bus is what I always say.
I love that. And you've inspired me to try to work out more. So thank you. And then I think, when we're talking about who we work with and who we work for, if we're interviewing, whatever that might look like, it seems like it could be one of the main things we should find out when we're being interviewed, those of us, those who may be interviewing, those listening, find out if your potential employer or potential boss is an empathetic person,
Yeah.
because you have the choice, back to what you have lived your life by. This choice of the power of and is, you can choose. You can choose. Nobody's making you do anything.
Right. You can choose. And I think for me, it's always been very important. The teams that I built, the people that I work for with, and I think when you really think about, sometimes you find yourselves in a role or a job or a situation that you don't like. I hate to go to work every day. I don't like the boss I work for. I don't like the people. Well, you've got the power to change that.
Mhm.
And to me, that's, and whether it's immediate, but you can start turning those cycles to start making a change for yourself.
Yes.
And that's always been kind of at my heart. If you don't like something, Maria, change it. If not, change your attitude. And that really has said, yeah, you're right. If I'm going to be upset about something, if I'm not going to like, then do something about it. Make that change. And if not,
Yes.
if it's something that I can't, you change your attitude of what, how you see it.
Well, we definitely knew you were going to be inspirational. I knew you would be when I uh, contacted you through our friend Michelle Peluso, and she speaks so highly of you. All of your colleagues do as well. You won awards. I don't know if I mentioned this or not. You were named one of the 50 most influential women in B2B marketing in 2020 by Top Rank Marketing B2B. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Many other awards that you've won. We just want you to know that how much we appreciate you, Maria, by everything that you are living your life as a corporate executive, but as a human being. You're adding to the universe in a positive way, and you've added to the C2CEO podcast on air. We really appreciate your time.
No, well, thank you for having me here. I mean, I think that, hopefully those of you listening, got something out of the podcast today. If you have any questions, I'm always available on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. And, I'll leave you with this. I think in life, you should always have three hobbies, is the way that I see it. Three things, three hobbies. One that keeps you in shape, one that keeps you creative,
Nice.
and then one that makes you money. And
Very good.
and that to me has been kind of one of my guiding, principles. And just think about that, what that is. What are your hobbies? What are your hobbies?
I
So thank
love
you
it.
so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I could probably talk for another hour
We
with you. But
Let's
I
do
think,
it again. Let's do it
okay,
again when we get back into the flow. So just one last question. I love the three hobbies. It's staying in shape, being creative, and making money. Those
yep,
are the three things. And it's okay to be bold enough to know that you can ask for the raises and ask for the money and feel comfortable, because it's just the same as being creative and staying in shape.
yep.
I
Always.
love
I
it.
mean, if you don't speak up, who else is going to speak up for you? I mean, mentors and sponsors are incredible. I've always had, and I'm active in that, but really you are your best, kind of promoter, and think about that and think about how you speak, about yourself and where and how you show up, every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Molly Meeker just put in the chat room the link to the study that you
Perfect.
co-authored, and it's on the LinkedIn, my LinkedIn post as well. Stay in touch, Maria. We'll do the same, and Happy New Year.
Now, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to everyone. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And everybody, you can listen to the recording of this podcast on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. We'll actually have the video. And we've all had a great time listening and talking with you, Maria. Thank you.
No, I think this is great. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Maria. Thank you.